Sorry, guys. Okay. Mm, that's cool. Okay. Chapter 19, the basics of baking. So who all has made their own bread? I have definitely made my own bread. I can't and I won't in this trailer. I can't do it. I don't have a way to cover the dough while it's rising, whereas there won't be cockroaches in it. I have no way to do it, so I'm not gonna bother. I will resume doing that on the property where everything is going to be new. Okay, and who of you guys have made sourdough? That is something I really want to step into and start doing. Who's made pita bread before? I've never made pita bread, but I actually would like to start doing that. This covers sourdough starter. We have made cornbread that turned out really well. And once we're on the property and we're in our house, I will go ahead and make my bread recipe. Which, by the way, guys, that is in our cookbook. That's in the Faith First cookbook. So, and I'm still working hard on that. I just haven't worked on it for a few days. But I will get back into, I'm going to try to, I still got to get those recipes from Aaron. There's still a few more I need to look back up. I'm not sure exactly how many total I'm going to have in it. So, anyway, I will, I'm going to get some more work done on that right now. There's 92 recipes in it. So, I'm doing pretty good on that one. Anyway, and I'll let you guys know when that's done and when it's available. I'll have to send for the cookbooks. And then you guys just let me know. And they'll probably be between $10 or $15. I might go for 15 depending on how much it costs me. So, anyway, I'll let you guys know that. But, alright, so on to the basics of baking. And let me see. I think I'm going to do... I think I'll do 2 videos out of this. Alright, so, how baking bread saved my sanity. I really love making bread, I really do. Before I started my homesteading journey, like many Americans after the financial collapse of '08, I was laid off from my job. It was not my fault, I was just downsized. Many people all over the country faced the same situation. The mortgage bonds collapsed, banks were bailed out, and the little people of the world got laid off. It was a rough year to say the least. In '08, I started working. I went from Marco's Pizza, which I'd been there for 3 years, and I went from there to Walmart because the reason I switched jobs then was because Marco's Pizza, being a delivery driver, was just taking way too much out of my collie. So was that a yes, partner? I started working in the photo lab at Walmart in Lansing, East Lansing, Michigan, on Lake Lansing Road. Okay, sorry. Immediately after being laid off, I did everything a person is supposed to do when they get laid off. I worked desperately hard to find another job while trying my best to feel useful. I kept the house as best as I could. I packed lunch for my wife, who luckily managed to hang on to her job, and I took care of the kids. One day, while hanging on to my sanity by cleaning the kitchen, I found a bread machine my wife had purchased at a thrift store during one of her treasure hunting trips. And Aaron actually has a bread machine now, so he's got a cheater. Hey, it's okay. The bread machine saved. Suddenly, I had a plan. I'd make bread. That would save my family money and give me something useful to do. The bread machine saved my sanity that year. I searched online and downloaded a PDF of the owner's manual. Bread machines are not intuitive appliances. I only used it about half a dozen times. Despite being easy to use, making bread is an art, and bread makers don't often allow for the expression of the baker or the yeast for that matter. But it introduced me to the world of baking, and I'll be forever grateful to that little $5 thrift store find and my wife who persistently purchased it. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I spent the next year until I finally got a job at a media company baking bread for my family. My kids loved it, my wife loved it, even my in-laws who stayed with us for a brief period during that time loved it. I baked every kind of bread I could think of: pita bread, sourdough bread, white wheat bread, Amish sandwich bread, French loaves, you name it, I baked it. Looking back, that was probably the year we started thinking about homesteading as a lifestyle. Baking bread showed me and my family that maybe, just maybe, we didn't have to buy into the consumerist culture. I could bake bread for myself and my family. Maybe I could do more. The science behind the magic. Baking, like fermentation and agriculture in general, is an integral part of human history. Bread is mentioned in the Bible, depicted on the walls of Egyptian temples. Goddesses of baking and bread have been worshipped for millennia. Bread allows humans to process cereal grains, wheat, barley, rye, oats, etc., into consumable food. At the same time, the process of adding yeast to dough and letting it rise allows people to get more out of their grains. Bread is primarily composed of a handful of ingredients: flour, oil, salt, and water. The outcome, however, is greater than the sum of its parts. Bread contains proteins not found in flour, for example. While bread and the gluten that binds it together have gotten a bit of a bad rap recently, I'm personally of the opinion that it has more to do with the way wheat is produced in our food system, as well as the industrial methods of the food preparation. I've been leaning forward too much lately and trying to lay on my side and crap. And my boobs are too big. The process of producing bread is composed of a handful of steps. No matter the recipe: proofing yeast or sourdough, mixing dough, kneading, first rise, kneading and forming dough into loaves, second rise, and baking. The proofing and rising parts of the process are, in my opinion, when the magic actually happens. Proofing is the activation and reawakening of leavening agents. For almost all bread, the leavening agents are yeast or sourdough starter. Yeast is composed of just that, living yeast microbes. Yeast is a fungus that consumes sugars and carbohydrates, producing alcohol and carbon dioxide. The small amount of alcohol produced by bread yeast is cooked off, but the carbon dioxide provides gas bubbles throughout the dough that give most bread its fluffy texture and causes the bread to rise. As the gas is produced, the dough expands to accommodate the bubbles. In the case of sourdough, the starter is actually a SCOBY, symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. Like pure yeast, the wild yeast in sourdough produces carbon dioxide, but the bacteria in the starter produces acid, which gives sourdough its distinctive flavor. What is gluten? Now, there's quite a few people that have a big problem with gluten. Andrew's one of them. He's really allergic to it. Gluten is a binding protein produced during the bread making process. As yeast consumes carbohydrates in the bread, proteins in the flour are left behind. The proteins, called gluten, help provide bread with the structure it needs to contain the carbon dioxide produced by the leavening. White flours have a higher gluten concentration than whole wheat flours. In fact, many whole wheat bread recipes call for extra gluten or a combination of wheat and white flours to produce the necessary softness most people look for in bread. A pure whole wheat bread tends to be more dense than bread with extra gluten or with white flour as an additive. I don't like white flour. The most white that I'll use as a flour is unbleached flour. And from this point on, I'm going to try to start sending for at least once a month a big bag of. I might try to start getting the einkorn flour, which is one of the best flours out there. It's also a flour that has not been messed with. It doesn't have the extra additives and GMOs and all that kind of crap in it. So it's a lot healthier. All right, bread and beyond. Once you get bread down, you will want to move on to other projects. Muffins and cakes are pretty much just sweetened bread. And since most muffins and cakes call for chemical leavening agents, they don't require the rising time that bread does. Pie crusts, despite their reputation, are actually easy to make. I highly recommend using lard instead of shortening, as it will result in a flakier crust. Plus, if you render your own lard from your own processing of your own meats from your own property and your own farm animals, it's a lot healthier. Believe it or not, shortening is so bad for you. It is just as bad for you as vegetable oil, because that's all it is, and it's gross. Once you have pie crust down, not only can you make your own fruit pies, but you can also experiment with meat pies. This will make you the most popular person in your family and probably in your neighborhood. Baking tips. If you get deeply into baking, there are 3 things you can do to improve your chances of success. Number 1, use bread flour. You can avoid it substituting all-purpose when a recipe calls for bread flour. But bread flour makes a big difference in the texture of your bread. I've personally never used bread flour, and I'm trying to get into the more natural, healthier stuff, so I probably won't. Bread flour has more protein, which leads to more gluten structure. See, I'm trying to get away from that gluten, especially because Andrew and Chloe kind of has a slight allergy to it, so, and Scott needs to get away from it too. So we're trying to get away from that. Number 2, warm up the oven. Before you mix your dough, turn your oven on to the lowest setting. Oh gosh. As soon as it's done preheating, turn it off. Don't open the oven door. Once you're done mixing the dough, set it aside. I'm trying to keep it to where I'm looking more at you guys at the camera instead of down on my book, you know. Once you're done mixing the dough, set it aside. Set it inside the oven to rise, sorry. So I can't even do that here because we have freaking cockroaches in the... That's gross. I don't even want to think about it. The extra warmth will help promote yeast growth. Due to climate control, most modern homes have kitchens that are just a bit too chilly for yeast to do its thing. I'm not going to get into that. That's a big thing, and no. Giving it a warm place to incubate means you'll get a better rise from your dough. Number 3, let sourdough sit overnight. Sourdough starter makes bread taste acidic. To get the best flavor in your sourdough, let it sit overnight. You'll get a better rise, better gluten formation, and a tastier bread if you let it proof for at least 12 hours more if you want. The great thing about sourdough starter is that you can play with it a bit, experimenting with different proofing times to get a different flavor and texture. Leavening agents. While most bread is leavened with yeast or sourdough, many baked goods call for self-rising flour. I've never used that either. Self-rising flour has baking soda and baking powder mixed in. Both of these ingredients create a rise in breads and other baked goods by producing carbon dioxide through a chemical reaction. In fact, some recipes even call for a tablespoon of vinegar to help make cakes and muffins fluffier. A similar process is produced in a southern-style cake called a cola chocolate cake. I would not use that because that is really unhealthy. Instead of using baking soda or baking powder to produce carbon dioxide, the recipe calls for 8 ounces of cola. The carbonation in the soda actually provides the gas needed for the cake to rise. Again, I would not do that because that's really unhealthy. Okay, so that's it for the start of that, and then the next one is going to be the 3 recipes for pita bread, sourdough starter, and mom's cornbread. I might actually... I don't know. I'm debating on splitting those up. Anyway, so that's it for the beginning of the baking section. And I will go ahead and get this up there, and I will see you guys in a few minutes. Let me know who's made pita bread, who does sourdough, who's made their own bread, you know, cornbread. What kind of breads have you guys made? How do you make it? Do you use a bread machine? Do you make it the old-fashioned style? You know, let me know. Leave a comment and let me know, guys. And I will see you in a little bit. Bye, guys.